About a year ago, I got sucked back into a franchise I never thought I would come back to, Five Nights at Freddy's. I still remember vividly when FNAF came out, 11 years ago now. Oh my god. My first exposure to it was from a playthrough by Yami Mash, which in case you didn't know was the YouTuber that got Markiplier into the game, alongside the massive demand from his fans. I had watched Yami Mash's playthrough on my 2DS while sitting in the living room during a visit at a family member's house. Man, at 10 years old, I was blown away by the concept that FNAF brought, and I was pretty much addicted to it for like the next 3 years of my life. Like seriously, it was the only media I consumed other than maybe like Pokemon for the longest time around that age. So I kind of have first-hand experience of the early days of the fandom, at least from a child's perspective. By the time FNAF World came out was when I kind of stopped actively keeping up with the franchise, only vaguely being aware of the quite literally lore-changing revelations that happened during FNAF 6. I would watch Markiplier's uploads here and there when new FNAF games came out, but never truly keeping up with what was going on and taking everything at face value. Of course, that perspective has changed since now after I spontaneously found myself coming back to the franchise one random night and quite literally getting my mind blown on what exactly I had been missing out on. Five Nights at Freddy's lore is actually kind of good. Not because the writing is like peak or anything, but because of its storytelling methods and the community it generates because of that. And sure, there is genuine validity in criticizing the messiness of FNAF storytelling, but as of now, I think FNAF lore is actually at its most cohesive, and will probably continue to do so even with the next upcoming game. Speaking of upcoming releases, the Dead by Daylight x Five Nights at Freddy's collaboration. Whew, that was a big day for me alongside many other fans when this licensed chapter was announced on August 5th, 2024, in celebration of FNAF's 10th anniversary. Dead by Daylight is a media that means something deeply to me despite the many horrible things that I get to experience when I play that game. In a way, it quite literally changed my life, as it was something I found comfort in 2021, and would set off a chain of events within my life that led me to where I am today now that I think about it. But that's a little too much of a personal story for my channel. So, regardless, the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter for Dead by Daylight is probably the most requested license ever from the DBD community, considering its relevance in modern pop culture and the phenomenon it was for indie horror. I wanted to talk about this specifically because as of writing this, we are only 4 days away from getting our first look at the collab, and I wanted to get my thoughts out before I'm ultimately proved wrong or even right. Ever since I found out about this collab, alongside becoming knee-deep into the FNAF community when it comes to lore and theory, my brain has been swirling with the implications of what this collab can mean for Dead by Daylight. Specifically the lore. If you're a DBD fan, you probably already know how the game handles its lore, but if you're a FNAF fan thinking about getting into Dead by Daylight because of this collab, I can give you a quick rundown. When it comes to chapters, typically a playable survivor and a killer are released within the game alongside with perks that diversify the mechanics of the game, and a bio to learn about the story behind these characters. Concerning licensed chapters, the quality of writing within the characters can vary. You've got amazing licensed chapters where the bios further fleshes out their story and gives new content for fans, or you've got not so great stories where the characters align with the canon of their universe with nothing really new or interesting happening. While writing this, neither killer or survivor has been confirmed, but the biggest guess is that it will probably be Springtrap or William Afton as the killer, and Michael Afton, his son, as the survivor. While I don't think their movie adaptations are out of the realm of possibilities, people do think it's going to be from the mainline games specifically. There's the potential chance that they'll throw a complete curveball and it's going to be the Mimic and someone else as a survivor. Either way, if it's William Afton and Michael Afton from the mainline games, this means FNAF fans will finally get official depictions of these characters outside of their ugly sprite models. FNAF has many mediums within its franchise outside the games that are used as supporting evidence to figure out the lore within the mainline story. And the creator of FNAF, Scott Cawthon, is notoriously particular for the way his franchise is handled concerning canon. I highly doubt that the Dead by Daylight chapter itself will be canon, but I do think that what the character bios entail can offer an outline for FNAF fans when it comes to comprehending the game's lore and theorizing. Because honestly, I highly doubt that Scott Cawthon will let a random behavior employee write the lore without his moderation. Speaking of a behavior employee writing the lore, in general, I think Dead by Daylight struggles with storytelling, and that may have to do with the fact it isn't the same writer for most of their stories. While the bios of characters typically entail the events leading up to when the character gets taken by the fog, one of Dead by Daylight's biggest downfalls is characterizing their survivors. I actually think they do a better job with their killers for the most part, which makes sense considering their killers are the main draw of the game, but when it comes to survivor lore, it leaves a lot to be desired. I know saying Dead by Daylight sucks with narrative storytelling might be a hot hot take, but right now I'm sticking to it. I'm not going to get into it considering it's specifically how they handled their original characters because this video is about FNAF, but long story short, when it comes to what's written in the bios, that is usually all we get from characters story-wise, unless they get a tomb, which can also end up being a nothing burger depending what it chooses to tackle. That being said, the tomb for the Saw franchise was actually pretty decent. While a lot of Saw fans didn't like how Amanda was written, a fair amount of them were thoroughly satisfied with the way Tap was delivered and what it means for the franchise. Specifically how his story took place before the Saw movies, which is content Saw fans wouldn't have gotten without Dead by Daylight. This actually raises for some serious potential for the FNAF chapter concerning its lore if Dead by Daylight chooses to go the same route. Alongside the character bios, a FNAF tomb could offer even more story content for fans, which may or may not be a good thing depending the direction it goes. And considered how heavily demanded this license has been and the weight on Behavior's shoulders when it comes to handling it, I really do think they are going to make a tomb for the chapter. It makes the most sense, and I really truly believe Scott Cawthon will be involved in it. So that's what Dead by Daylight means to FNAF, but what does FNAF mean to Dead by Daylight? I think depending on the reception of this chapter, this could potentially change Dead by Daylight forever. The last time a release truly changed DBD was probably back when Resident Evil was released, which brought in a new wave of fans and led to a lot of quality of life changes for Dead by Daylight. And it's obvious this is going to be the case when FNAF officially comes out, considering the developers have already been optimizing and improving the game with every update leading up to this chapter. Alongside the new wave of fans that FNAF will bring in, I think FNAF will also solidify what direction Dead by Daylight will go. While there are multiple other licenses that can be included in the game, I don't think any of these franchises will even come close to the same hype as FNAF, and because of that, I think this is when Behavior is going to be the most attentive to fans. My particular hopes is that if the FNAF chapter does offer new lore content, it generates enough of discussion that makes Behavior want to lean more into story. Because while it's something they do care about, it does seem like it's also something they fumble over and over again. They disregard characterizations and continuity in favor of a multiverse and emphasizing how powerful the entity is, which I just think is straight up boring. Considering how important the story is to the FNAF fanbase when it comes to the franchise, if they truly succeed in storytelling in Dead by Daylight and the character writing of Springtrap and Michael Athman is something almost groundbreaking for the franchise, this may encourage Dead by Daylight to continue making more story content, not only for licensed chapters, but their original ones too. And that's why I wanted to make a quick video like this. The Dead by Daylight lore used to be something that I was incredibly invested in, but over time I lost interest when I realized that they would never write more story for the majority of their characters, as they prioritize pumping out, aesthetics over quality storytelling. It's kind of a horrible feeling when they release a new chapter and maybe a tomb of characters you end up falling in love with, only to realize that the game will never come back to them again. But I think FNAF can change that. While the license might be a one and done deal, it might be an encouragement for Behavior to revisit their other licensed chapters and original chapters and further flesh out the story surrounding them within the Dead by Daylight canon. Regardless, I'm very excited for when the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter comes out, and I'll definitely be playing day one. Even if the lore ends up not being what I expected, I'm sure at the very least the new game mechanics will be very fun to play and go against. And hey, if you're a FNAF fan who somehow ended up on this channel, I'm not someone who normally asks for this, but maybe hit subscribe. I'm planning on releasing a video in these next upcoming months covering the lore of every Dead by Daylight chapter, so if you want to learn more about the story of the game, stick around. Until then, eat strange.